I'm Olivia Otieno. This is Double O Direct, live on SpiceFM 94.4 in Nairobi. We're also streaming live on the homepage standardmedia.co.ke. Welcome to you all, plus those joining us simulcasting on KTN News. You mentioned something earlier which was so poignant. You're not a woman leader, you're a leader. With regards to your leadership, with regards to the leaders that you have had the opportunity to meet, living or not, are you able to craft for me the traits, the characteristics of a good leader? Because we're not just talking about a man or a woman, we're not talking about public sector or private sector, we're talking about leadership in general, whether it's even just the leader of a head of a household.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually when you look at, and I will look at some of the, interesting people that I've met, like I said, Mandela or Obama, or, people that run industries in Kenya, the Michael Josephs, the late Bob Collymore. And I think the one trait that I saw in them that was successful wasn't that they were looking at the return on investment from a revenue point of view. It was that they were intrinsically kind. And I think that for me was just such a strong, realization that kindness in leaders is everything, and that's the one thing that I saw as a common thread in all those people was kindness. And kindness is so powerful, just being a leader that is able to put aside for a minute how much money they were going to make, to being what kind of, what impact, what was their return on investment when it came to just being kind.
True, so true. You have accomplished and achieved so much, birthing a company that then was a shining beacon for the region that attracted foreign investment. You've raised two amazing children. Before I ask you about what it took, from a mental and a physical health perspective,
sure,
let me ask you about that journey through motherhood, because your daughter is a professor.
She is.
Maybe you can tell me a little bit about your two children.
Yeah, they're incredible. I mean, they're my largest source of joy and my inspiration. And they're just very strong characters in their own way, in their different fields. So Natalia is a professor, English literature professor. But not only that, she's 16th, 17th century travel writing professor.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it's
highly specialized.
Very specialized, very niche.
Yes.
But I just love what she does, and I love the fact that she found this very interesting niche and decided she would be the best that she possibly could at it, and she's incredible. And I'm so proud of her. We're really great friends. She was such a big inspiration for my book. Yes. In terms of, Mom, you've got to do it.
Yes.
So you need to get this done. But I couldn't have asked for a closer friend than I have in Natalia.
Yes.
Her birth was a little traumatic. She was born very early, premature baby, had a very difficult few weeks when she was born. But she's a fighter and she's a survivor, and I marvel at everything that she does, and I see her often, and I'm just so proud of hearing about her lectures and her writings and just her determination and also the kindness in which she treats her students. I think I'm absolutely very proud of her.
I had the fortune to meet her.
That's right, you did.
Late last year. It was really a privilege. And your husband too, at that amazing function that we attended. But your son was not there, was he?
Wasn't he? No, he might have not arrived yet, so he probably came a little later in December. So Nathan is a football recruitment analyst in the UK. Yes. Has 3 degrees in football.
Wow.
I didn't know it was possible, but he assured me that that they were all there, and I was like, you want to do what?
Yes.
You want to do a degree in what?
Yes.
In football. And I'm like, that's what you do for fun.
Yes.
Like, who does football? But Nathan's a charmer in our family, and he had everything ready to show me.
Yes.
And I think he kind of softened it a little bit, because knowing that I'm a businesswoman, saying actually it's football business. And so I was like, okay, well that's okay. And so he did his first degree, and then he did his second degree, and then during COVID he did his third degree. And so he looks for talent.
Yes.
And he's loving what he's doing. He's living in the UK. We're just so proud of both of them for having two completely different journeys.
Yes.
And you know, the fact that they're creating lives for themselves outside of their comfort zone, which is here, which is a lot easier, but really, you know, deciding that they're going to be at the top of their game wherever they are. And so it's incredible.
Culturally, we've noticed a lot of families who start businesses. The children are indoctrinated quite young. They're there after school, they're there on the weekends. They're kind of molded and positioned to then take over the family business. What advice do you have for allowing your children to grow their own wings and soar into their own chosen fields?
So I think it was probably the opposite for me. My children spent a lot of time in my office.
Yes.
You know, a lot of time. After school, every day, they'd do their homework in the office. Every event I went to, if they were off school, they'd come with me. And I think that totally put them off. So I think it worked the opposite. They were very clear that's not what they wanted to do. But, you know, my business was my dream. And that was made very clear to me by my kids. Like, okay, that was your dream. And I needed them to go ahead and have their own dreams. Otherwise, you know, if that was the case, then I would be living in Nanyuki, running my parents' hotel.
True.
Which so I think, you know, I think kids need to be allowed to. We keep raising them to be independent. Then when they get independent, we're like, no, we didn't mean it. We didn't really mean that fast, you know. But no, I'm very proud of them, and I really believe in allowing everyone to actually develop to their own potential and what they love to do.
I'm glad you mentioned your parents' hotel, because your father never saw you as Gina Din, PR maven.
No.
He never saw you as a mother.
No.
How do you communicate what you learned from him? Because I understand he was very impactful in your upbringing, and his character, his work ethic, his general ethos on life. How do you communicate that to your children? What do you say about their grandfather?
So we never act like he's not here. You know, like he's very present in our lives. He was definitely a larger than life character.
Yes.
So a lot of what we do or who we are is because of who he was to me. So my parents, you know, my parents are very alive in my children's minds. And they know everything. They know everything about him. They know all the stories, and we talk about it on a regular basis. Luckily, my sisters and I, you know, have had such a great relationship with our parents, and so they're very present. They're really very present. Writing the book, I think, actually helped with that, because there were things that maybe I hadn't told them or had slipped, and then, you know, my kids were like, "Oh, really? That happened? Oh, you know, so this is what your dad said." Or so I think the book really helped in also adding on to who my father and my mother were.
Speaking of the book, as you transitioned from running Gina Din PR into Gina Din, daughter of Africa, now a Pan-African icon, a Pan-African voice, how did that come about with regards to this has to be done?
So it was a bucket list item that I always wanted to do. I just didn't think I would do it when I did it. So it was always something that, oh, you know, one day I'll write a book.
We all say that. We all say that.
One day I'm going to write a book. But then COVID happened. And so, you know, I'm suddenly, because I travel a lot, I mean, I'm not still enough where I could actually sit down to write. But COVID happened, and I had no choice but to be still.
Yes.
And my daughter was like, "Mom, why don't you go ahead and write your book?" And I was like, "I'm not really ready to write my book." But then I started, you know, every day I'd journal a little bit, and before I knew it, I had enough for a manuscript.
Yes.
But it's still quite scary, and, you know, it's quite a vulnerable thing to do, is to put your story out there, because you just don't know how it's going to be received. So I'd written, and everything was ready, and then I'm just like, okay, it's fine now, I've written it. but it's not going to go anywhere because I'll come back to it in a few years, and you know, and I'll revisit it.
Yes.
And my kids were like, so you just spent like a year and a half of your life,
yes,
and now you're not going to have your book out there, you know. And so they very lovingly convinced me that it was okay. I could put it up there. And it was important. I needed that permission.